Hi, I'm Steve McCord, Cattaraugus County Director of Veteran Services, and this is Our Veterans, Their Stories, preserving our heroes' stories, one story at a time.
I graduated from Delevan Machias Central School in Delevan. We were the last graduating class there. And at the time, everybody wanted, or they said needed, to go to college. I went to State University at Morrisville for 2 years. Went into electronics, and when it came to graduation, I had gotten a letter from the draft board saying that because I was born on August 29th, that I was number 22 to be drafted. When I got home, I went down to Olean and see Chief Stark at the Navy, and he was a great recruiter. He talked to me about the Navy, and I didn't dare be drafted into the Army, and because at the time it was fast track right into mainland Vietnam. So I decided that I was going to enlist in the Navy, and he put me on a 6-month delayed program. In that time, me and Carol got married, and my first assignment was Great Lakes Naval Training Center for a boot camp. Then we went to Orlando, Florida, to A school. I was colorblind, so there was a lot of jobs that were eliminated because you needed to be, have a color perception. So they taught me how to type, and I became an office person. Got a call once we got home from Orlando. I knew I was going to be stationed aboard the aircraft carrier America, and that I would be, going to the Mediterranean Sea for our cruise. Well, at the time, let's see, who was president? Admiral Zumwalt from the Pentagon came down and talked to the guys on board ship, and he said, I'm going to activate the ship, and you're going to Vietnam instead of the Mediterranean. So they gave me a call, and they said, you better fly down here a day early, and because the next day we're leaving. When I got on board that night, I says, so where are we leaving to? Because they hadn't told me on the phone. And I found out that we were going to Vietnam and no return date. Well, just weeks before that, I found out that we were going to have our first child. My son came along December 25th. Carol said, if you aren't going to be home, neither am I. So I found out 2 days later that he was born. I worked in the office on board the ship. I checked in new people being flown over to the ship in the Philippines. We saw Singapore. We went to Hong Kong. It's all in my cruise book there. We had U.S.S. or the one of the beauty contest winners, Miss America, come over and come aboard with an entourage. They had a thing called Shellback Day when you cross the equator. When you cross the equator, they put you through this humiliating, I don't know, what do you call it? It's like an initiation. And we had to eat green ham and eggs in the morning and then crawl up to the flight deck. And this great big old Navy guy, he had his stomach all greased up. We had to kiss the baby's belly. But once we crossed the line, then we got our card that said we were an official Shellback. It was certainly, condensed, because on board a ship was ship's company. They ran the ship, they fed the whole crew. They had doctors' offices, dental, payroll, everything. And then once you depart Norfolk, then aircraft come on and all of their people. And so ultimately you've got between 4,000 and 5,000 people all on one ship. And there's people way down in the belly of the ship all the way up to where the captain is steering the ship up above, and the quartermasters and that. And you could go up on the observation decks and watch flight operations. We when we were in Vietnam, we were 12 on and 12 off. They would fly missions into Vietnam, protecting our Army people. And also when towards the end, when we had to push to try and get Ho Chi Minh to sign the peace agreement, we were bombing the hell out of North Vietnam. And it just, like I worked in the office, I would prepare documents that were a history file of their everybody's naval career. Some only were reservists that may serve 2 years, and we had guys that were in 30 years. Yeah. We had a quartermaster, we called him Pappy Burns. He was in 35 years, and he stayed on board the U.S.S. America most of that time. But it was a very large ship. When we left Norfolk to go to Vietnam, we went around the southern tip of Africa through the Indian Ocean, and we hit a typhoon. All these other ships were, crashing under the waves. We barely could feel the ship rocking, but I worked in first class mess. When my first 30 days, I'd wash dishes and help them feed the first class sailors. And then one of the guys in the office, personnel office, didn't work out. They had me come back to the office, and he mess cooked. So everybody was assigned a job. Make sure our area shower and bedrooms were all cleaned up, and we'd sleep. My first experience on board the ship was I was on the top rack with a steam pipe right above my head, and it was hot down there. But we were all packed in like sardines because they had to have room for everything on board the ship. They stairs, they call them ladders. The ladder would come down, and my bunks were like tucked into a little cubby over here, and then you go around the corner and there's bunks all along in there, probably, I don't know, 30 or 40 people down there. And that pipe, it was insulated with, I guess, asbestos, Yeah. But the way it was set up, there was a locker right under your the base where you slept. Mm-hmm. You just unlock the padlock and put your mattress in this plate up, and all of your stuff goes in there. You're not supposed to have uniforms or that kind of stuff out hanging up. So the ship was air conditioned. Oh. Yeah, they had air conditioned, but it was still 65, 70 degrees. We had a lead destroyer, one on each side and one in the back. Plus, they would never tell you this, but we had a submarine under each, because one night we went into general quarters, which means that you go man a battle station in case the ship's hit by a bomb or something. And there was a Comar boat that came within striking distance of our ship, and immediately they launched 2 fighter jets, and they went and, I guess, sunk that ship because it was within, our operating area. There was always food being brought aboard. It takes a lot of food to feed that many people, and fuel for the airplanes. They're needed to refuel the airplanes. And what else? I don't know. There was always, a sea detail going on where they would do that. Once the plane is sent off, the catapult hits the end of the ship, and you can hear that throughout the whole ship. Bong, bong. So it's you know that flight operations are going on. And when the ship comes, or when the planes are coming back, then they stretch a cable across the back, and there's a tail hook that goes down and catches that cable, and a plane that's flying 200 miles an hour suddenly stops right in the middle of the flight deck.
Now, when you guys were on there, you said you could come up on top. Where would you hang
Well,
out?
this is the where the commander sails a ship from, and up here is observation deck on the outside. You could watch the whole thing going on. When we were in the Med, if they had planes that needed to be repaired, there was a elevator that planes would go over onto this elevator. The elevator would lower, and in the middle here is a hangar bay where they worked on the planes. Then when I was in the Med, we had a swim call. They stopped the ship as much as they could, and they put a rope ladder down into the water, and we got our swim trunks on, and we could dive off the hangar bay elevator into the water. Well, on each corner of the thing was Marines with their rifles to shoot sharks that might have been in the water. I tried it. I dived in, and man, it was all I could do to keep swimming to catch up with a ladder to climb back up. I was exhausted that day, but
What's the third runway? The one that's kind of going off to the
well,
side.
that is another one of these catapults, I think, because they could fly three off at one time.
So you could hear that all night.
Well, it depends on what time of the day they would be flying. They flew during the day. They'd fly at night. All times.
What kind of what was the aircraft that were flying off of it?
Well, like this one here is a radar. It
So they had
has that.
AWACS back then.
Yeah. They had bombers. We had vigilantes. I'm not very good versed at the different, planes, but there was the ships or the planes are all lined up by their make, and these would have been squadrons that were home ported, like in Oceana, Virginia. They have an airstrip there, and when they deploy, they meet the ship. The planes fly out of the airport there and land on the ship, and then they're with the ship throughout the whole deployment. And then when you get home, they fly back into their home port. Vietnam is like
It's like
sort of shaped like Florida.
Mm-hmm.
It sticks out. And we had 5 or 6 carrier groups that were over there all at one time. And what they did, they had one carrier that was up towards North Vietnam, and then another one and another one going south, and one in the Philippines. So every 2 weeks you moved up the line. We were I think it was like in October or November, we spent 45 days on the line. 12 on, 12 off. It was just monotonous as hell. Very little breaks. They said, well, if the pilots are going to be flying for 12 hours and everybody else is working 12 hours, you're going to be here in the office working 12 hours too. So, but yeah, it was, a lot of time over there.
So when you got to the north, is that when you, after you got to
Yeah,
the north?
the end guy, the one in
Philippines?
the Philippines would come out and meet the group, and the other one would either come out and go like to Singapore or Hong Kong or back to Subic Bay, Philippines. Singapore was beautiful. It was a beautiful place. But what you had to do was take a Liberty boat. They had these boats that would take 20 sailors at a time and go up to a pier, and you'd climb off that little boat and it'd go out and get more people. And we had to do that in Greece, Barcelona. I was on shore patrol in Greece. We went to a island. The island was called Rhodes, and the shore patrol got to stay in a motel or a hotel on the island, in case they had to be there to take rowdy sailors back to the ship. But I was sleeping in the hotel, and 4 o'clock in the morning, all these roosters on the island started crowing. Everybody had chickens, and they'd start crowing. Man, no more sleeping that morning. Well, like in Athens, Greece, me and 2 buddies, we went to a movie. And at the movie, the concession stand had these little bottles of ouzo. And so we each had one. Well, I slept through the whole movie. that ouzo was so strong, it just knocked me right out. And they go, "Come on, the movie's done, we gotta leave." And we went from there out in a taxi cab ride along the airport, and there was a guy there giving camel rides. And I said, "Let's stop and ride a camel." And so we got on the camel and rode that. And there was a lot of partying. We had up in the captain's office, there was a older guy that joined the Navy. He was a school teacher in Saranac Lake, New York, and he decided that he wasn't going to be a teacher all his life, so he became a yeoman. And he was a wild character. He'd get so drunk. He'd get so drunk that he'd take his clothes off and sleep in the park naked. They'd shore patrol had to bring him back. He was running through the hotels naked. He was a bad boy. We did have an incident once. I was telling you the different like shops or areas. Well, we had a print shop. They would print the daily reports and that. Well, when we were in dry dock, they had one of the guys that worked in the print shop get arrested on the flight deck, or he was ready to leave the ship, and they asked him to open his briefcase, and he had counterfeit money that he printed down in the print shop. And he went to prison he went to Leavenworth for years and years and years. He was ready to take that. He had a counterfeit $20 plate that they printed one side of these bills, and he was taking it up to get his money and give them the bills and plate so they could print the backside of the money, and they caught him. Well, President Nixon signed the peace agreement in February 1973. As soon as that happened, they sent us back to the Philippines. I flew home. They flew us through Japan to Washington to Norfolk, Virginia, and then I flew to Buffalo. It was probably the longest flight of my life, but got to see my kid, and we moved down to Norfolk. Then 6 months later, I went on a med cruise. That was exciting. We saw Spain and the big city of Barcelona. Greece was fun to see. And then we came home and then sailed up to the North Atlantic. We stopped in England, and a bunch of us toured Wales and London and that. And then when we came home, the ship went into dry dock, and we were there till the end of my enlistment. I really didn't know what I was going to do with my life, so I decided to re-enlist. They gave me orders to home, Rochester. I was ASVAB test administrator up at Rochester for those people wanting to join the military. I spent 4 years doing that, and then we had moved home here to Arcade, and I got out of the Navy. My first job, it was a good job. I was promoting up, but the economy took a crap, and I lost my first job. So I had been looking at the Army Reserve, and I joined the Army Reserve in I think it was 83, 82 or 83, and spent 16 years in Army Reserve and retired with a pension and medical benefits of a retired military person. Carol and I both enjoy the medical benefits, plus get a little retirement snippet. You know, I get a paycheck every month from the Army. They had Navy Reserve. They had it in Buffalo and Rochester. At the time, the reserves were in Wellsville, Olean, Jamestown, as well as, Rochester and Batavia and Buffalo. I started out in Wellsville. I was a clerk because of my background. I worked in the payroll and getting people paid and doing payroll. And then as I progressed, I became an instructor. We our MOS was 71 Lima, which was teaching other soldiers how to work in an office or, fill out paperwork. And then they started downsizing, and when I promoted to E7, I went up here to Buffalo to an instructor academy, and they went to different places to instruct stuff. Then I got a chance to promote to E8, and I had to go to Rochester. I became the operations NCO at the Webster, New York school up there. And they drilled on Tuesday nights. So every Tuesday night, when I came home from work, I'd get my uniform on and head for Webster, which is a hour-and-a-half drive. Mm-hmm. Be there at 7 o'clock at night till 11. Head for home, get home at 12:30, grab a few winks, and go to work the next day again. It was, I spent 4 years doing that, and then they transferred, they closed the school. They were downsizing, they had closed Wellsville, they closed Olean, and sold the properties. Well, I had to find a job assignment so that I could finish out my career and be able to retire. And I ended up in Batavia at a 12 Bravo. 12 Bravo is infantry. I didn't know nothing about infantry, and here I am, their first sergeant. I was the head sergeant, and I talked to the career counselor, and I said, I'm really not into this. I said, I think it's time for me to retire. I had 22 years in, and so he put in the paperwork that day, and that was the last day I ever drilled.
You could have done Iraq.
Right.
Did they call you guys up?
Well, see, it was just before they started activating reservists. Desert Storm during the Bush administration.
Yeah.
So that was a concern too. My wife really didn't like the weekend drills because once a month I'd have to drill a weekend, and then once during the year I had to do 2 weeks, and that could be anywheres. We did a stint at down in Virginia at a place down there, one at Fort Indian Town Gap just outside of Harrisburg. Then one time they sent us out to Fort Leonard Wood in the middle of Missouri. I never seen an army base as big as Fort Leonard Wood. It was like thousands of acres, and they did boot camp out there, and we were in charge of the company that ran the boot camp. And it was just different every time we went on active duty. So, but Pro- the promotion possibilities was so much better in the Army than it was in the Navy. See, in the Navy, you had to take a promotion examination as well as do these training. That they'd give you a book and you had to read it and fill out assignments, and it was sort of like that in the Army, but promotion was a little different than the Navy. These are my medals that I got during my career. And you start out with this one here. This is a national it's everybody gets that when they complete boot camp. And this is good conduct. This one is Vietnam. They had I got 3 Vietnam awards. We had a meritorious unit accommodation, which we wore on the opposite side. And then this was the other one. The rest of these are achievements that I got through the Army Reserve. And they all have names, like up here. See, it's good conduct, national defense, Vietnam service, Vietnam campaign. There's my crows. There's what my medals looked like when I got out of the service, out of the Navy. The my rank on the sleeve. But no, it's been quite a difference, trying to balance a civilian life as well as a military career, But I told my wife, I kept telling her, it's going to pay off, it's going to pay off. And sure enough, when we retired, we got this medical coverage called TRICARE, and we had that until we were old enough to be Medicare through Social Security, and TRICARE pays for anything that Medicare doesn't, and it doesn't cost me or my wife a single cent. We did stuff during Army Reserve drills. We had one weekend where we dig a foxhole and learn how to do a foxhole, or we had helicopters come in and we got to go on board helicopters. It wasn't all just paperwork. We got out there and we did map reading. We'd go out in a big desolate field and have to find different points, and it was a learning experience. I don't use much of it anymore, but yeah. And then after I got out, my next door neighbor talked me into joining the VFW. And he was a commander of the local post down here, VFW Post 374. Well, I joined it, but I was so busy with reserves and my job and raising 2 kids, I never went to meetings. And then one day he says, you could really help us out, put on a VFW uniform and help us with funerals for veterans that pass away, or Memorial Day we do honor our dead, and Veterans Day and that sort of thing. And then we had a chance to resurrect the arcade American Legion. The Legion had been inactive for many, many years, and one of the guys says, they're going to disband the Arcade Legion if we don't, do something about it. Well, I'm a salesman. I sell the mixer trucks, and I can sell anything. So I started selling people on the idea of joining the VFW and the American Legion. And I grew a dormant Legion from 18 ghost members to over 100 now down here in the arcade. And because of the death rate of World War II veterans and now Vietnam veterans, the Legion is there to support the VFW in doing these activities, and it's really paying off for both groups. And it's a full-time, part-time activity for us, because Carol joined the Legion Auxiliary as well.